In the early 2000s, hip-hop stood at a crossroads. The South was rising with trap anthems, the Midwest was gaining momentum, and New York, hip-hop's birthplace, was fighting to reclaim its throne. The streets weren't quiet, mixtapes were booming out of car trunks, radio wars broke out at Hot 97, and every crew wanted to be the next dynasty. And then a new name exploded on the scene. A rapper from Southside Jamaica, Queens, who already lived through what most only rhymed about, shot 9 times, left for dead, blacklisted by labels, but instead of fading away, he became louder, hungrier, and sharper. His name was Curtis 50 Cent Jackson. With a mixtape army behind him, a co-sign from Eminem and Dr. Dre, and an ear for hooks that could turn street corners into stadium chants, 50 Cent didn't just enter the rap game, he conquered it. Get Rich or Die Tryin became one of the most explosive debuts of all time, and with him came a crew, G-Unit, including Lloyd Banks, Young Buck, and Yayo, each one ready to step up and carry the brand forward. Together, they weren't just a rap group, they were a movement. Mixtapes, multi-platinum albums, clothing lines, sneakers, street DVDs, and an empire built on raw charisma, relentless output, and calculated warfare. From Get Rich or Die Tryin to Beg for Mercy, from solo classics like The Hunger for More and Straight Outta Cashville to the chart-shaking force of the Massacre, the G-Unit run between 2002 and 2005 wasn't just successful, it was iconic. It was rap dominance in its purest form. This is a story of how 50 Cent and G-Unit rewrote the rules, reshaped the culture, and built one of the greatest runs in hip-hop has ever seen. Before 50 Cent became a global superstar, he was just Curtis Jackson from Southside Jamaica, Queens, raised in an environment where every day was a gamble, where hustling wasn't just a choice, but a survival tactic. Young Curtis learned early that money and respect were the only currencies that mattered. By the late 1990s, he was already making noise on the underground circuit. His 1999 single, How to Rob, flipped the industry upside down, mocking and name-dropping nearly every big artist in the game. Some rappers laughed, others were furious, but one thing was clear. 50 Cent wasn't afraid of anyone. The industry began to circle around him. Columbia Records signed him. His buzz was growing. Then everything changed. In May of 2000, outside his grandmother's home in Queens, 50 Cent was shot 9 times in broad daylight. He survived, but his career, at least on the surface, looked finished. Columbia dropped him. Labels were scared. Rumors spread that he was blackballed for good. But Curtis Jackson refused to be a cautionary tale. If anything, the attempt on his life made him hungrier. With his jaw wired shut, he taught himself how to rap differently. His delivery became slurred, almost controversial, but eerily catchy. His voice now carried the weight of a man who had stared death in the face and walked away. Now blocked from the major label system, 50 Cent invented his own lane, the mixtape circuit. With DJ Who Kid by his side and his crew, Lloyd Banks and Yayo, they flooded the streets with music. They didn't just rap over industry beats, they stole them, flipped them, and often made them better than the originals. For fans, these mixtapes were more than throwaways. They were street anthems. 50 Cent's The Future wasn't just a title, it was a prophecy. The buzz became undeniable. By 2002, 50 Cent's name was ringing from Queens to Atlanta to LA. He had done the impossible, turned exile into dominance, and then came the call. Eminem and Dr. Dre signed him to Shady Aftermath Records. Overnight, the underground king had the most powerful co-signs in hip-hop. The mixtape monster was about to go mainstream. The stage was set for one of the most explosive debuts in rap history. On February 6, 2003, hip-hop changed forever. Get Rich or Die Tryin wasn't just an album, it was an event. The industry hadn't seen anticipation like this in years. Backed by Dr. Dre and Eminem, 50 Cent's debut arrived with the weight of a movement behind it. And from the very first single, the takeover was undeniable. And the club was more than a hit, it was a cultural detonation. Dr. Dre's drums hit like gunfire, the string stabs felt like a victory march, and 50 Cent's hook was genius in its simplicity. Go shorty, it's your birthday, all words that turned into a permanent part of the global party vocabulary. The single shot up to #1 and stayed there for weeks, becoming one of the most defining songs of the 2000s. But the magic of Get Rich or Die Tryin was its balance. It wasn't just one sound. 50 gave the world his pain on many men, a chilling prayer for survival, born from the very bullets he took. He showed vulnerability on 21 Questions, proving gangsters could still write love songs without losing credibility. And with PIMP, he flipped his hustler persona into a Caribbean bounce that reached across borders. The album was cinematic. Street autobiography told with hooks sharp enough for the radio and verses real enough for the corners. Dr. Dre and Eminem gave 50 a polished stage, but the heart of the record was pure Southside Jamaica Queens. First week sales, it sold over 800,000 copies. It went 9 times platinum in the US alone, reached over 12 million copies worldwide, and had 4 top 10 singles of its album. Die Tryin didn't just dominate, it redefined what a debut album could be. In an era threatened by piracy and file sharing, 50 Cent moved units like it was the golden age. He proved that a mixtape king could step into the mainstream and not just survive, but dominate. And the victory wasn't just 50's alone. The success of Die Tryin lifted the entire G-Unit brand. Suddenly, Lloyd Banks and Yayo weren't just mixtape soldiers, they were stars in waiting. The streets were hungry for more. 50 Cent had planted his flag. The album was a declaration. He wasn't here to participate, he was here to dominate. Next, the world would meet G-Unit as a group, and their arrival would prove that Die Tryin was only the beginning. If Die Tryin was 50 Cent's declaration of war, Beg for Mercy was the army marching in behind him. Just 9 months after 50 Cent's solo debut, G-Unit, the crew that built his mixtape empire, was unleashed on the mainstream. The crew consisted of Lloyd Banks, the punchline assassin with ice cold delivery, Young Buck, the southern enforcer who gave G-Unit national reach, and Yayo, the raw energy and street charisma. Even though he was locked up during the album's release, his presence still loomed large. The first single, Stunt 101, laid out the G-Unit thesis in one record: money, cars, jewelry, and swagger, delivered with the kind of hooks that felt effortless but stuck in your head for weeks. Popping them things, painting a cinematic picture of negotiation with mob bosses, flipping gangsta rap into corporate dominance, and Wanna Get to Know Ya showed another side, smooth, R&B infused, proving the unit could pivot between the club, the block, and the bedroom. The debut album sold over 300,000 copies in its first week, went 2 times platinum in the US alone. The singles, Stunt 101, Popping Them Things, and Wanna Get to Know You, dominated the charts. This cemented G-Unit as more than 50 Cent's entourage. This was a functioning supergroup. What set Beg for Mercy apart wasn't just the music, it was a strategy. 50 Cent wasn't just running a rap group, he was running the brand. G-Unit clothing ads with Mark Echo, fans lining up at Foot Locker for G-Unit sneakers, bootleggers selling G-Unit DVDs in the streets. The G-Unit logo became as important as the music. Clothing lines, Reebok sneaker deals, mixtape DVDs, everywhere you turn, the brand was there. 50 Cent was taking a page from Wu-Tang's playbook, but scaling it with corporate muscle. Beg for Mercy proved that the movement wasn't a one-man show. Lloyd Banks and Young Buck emerged as legitimate stars in their own right. Yayo, though absent physically, was immortalized as the soul of the streets, the kind of figure that gave the unit authenticity and grit. By the end of 2003, G-Unit wasn't just a rap crew, they were a dynasty in the making. The question wasn't if the individual members could shine, the question was how big each one could get on their own. Beg for Mercy proving G-Unit could dominate as a collective. 50 Cent's next move was chess-like, launch each member as a solo star, while Follow was one of the most impressive runs in rap history, a conveyor belt of platinum albums that stretched across multiple years. First up was Lloyd Banks, known as the Punchline King. Banks had built a reputation on mixtapes long before his debut album. In June of 2004, he dropped The Hunger for More. The album was a statement. Banks could carry an entire project on his own without 50 Cent holding the spotlight. First week, the album sold over 400,000 copies and went #1 on the Billboard 200, and it went certified platinums with singles like On Fire, I'm So Fly, and Karma. On the song On Fire, it lit up the radio, while tracks like Karma showed a softer, radio-friendly side. Banks wasn't just 50 Cent's sidekick anymore, he was a star in his own right, earning respect for lyrical precision while still moving units at a mainstream level. Next came Young Buck. On August of 2004, he dropped Straight Outta Casual. His debut brought G-Unit into the South, bridging New York's grit with Southern swagger. The album sold over 350,000 copies in its first week. It went number 3 on the Billboard's Top 200 and went certified platinum. His debut singles, or some of his 5 singles, included Let Me In, Shorty Wanna Ride, and Look at Me Now. With Dr. Dre and Eminem co-signing alongside G-Unit and Muscle, Buck proved that he wasn't just riding the wave. He brought his own lane, his voice, his stories, and his charisma connected across regions, making him one of the most respected Southern rappers in the mainstream at that moment. Then came the West Coast invasion. The Game, handpicked by 50 Cent and Dr. Dre, he was the next one to rise. On January of 2005, he dropped a documentary. The documentary sold over 586,000 copies in its first week and went number 1 on the Billboard's Top 200 and is certified 2 times platinum. His 9 singles, or some of his 5 singles, was West Side Story, How We Do, Hate or Love It, and Dreams. The chemistry between 50 Cent and The Game was undeniable. How We Do and Hate or Love It became anthems, pushing G-Unit into yet another region. For a brief moment, New York and LA were united under the G-Unit banner, with The Game looking like the future of the West Coast. But behind the scenes, tensions were brewing. Creative clashes and power struggles foreshadowed the cracks in the empire that will later fracture the unit. Finally, Tony Yayo. After years behind bars, his debut album, Thoughts of a Predicate Felon, finally released in August of 2005. Tony Yayo was the street soldier, the gritty backbone of the unit. His album was less about polish and more about authenticity, raw tales from someone who had actually lived the G-Unit lifestyle to the fullest. I also dropped a video solo focusing on his debut album, so if you haven't seen that video already, go check it out. Now, back to the actual topic of the video. This album sold over 200,000 copies in the first week, went number 2 on the Billboard's Top 200, now is certified gold, maybe platinum as of 2025. And the singles that he dropped off the album were So Seductive, Curious, and Drama Setter. Now, with Tony Yayo's release, it completed the set. Every core member of G-Unit had gone solo, and every one of them had made a mark on the charts. In just over 2 years, the crew had dropped 5 platinum-level albums, cementing one of the most dominant runs hip-hop had ever seen. By the end of 2005, G-Unit wasn't just a rap group, they were a factory. 50 Cent had built an empire where every soldier could stand alone, yet still strengthen the brand. But the unit's momentum would soon face its biggest test. 50 Cent's next move, the highly anticipated follow-up to Die Tryin. By 2005, 50 Cent was no longer just a rapper, he was an icon. But the question on everybody's mind was, how do you follow up Die Tryin, one of the most impactful debuts in hip-hop history? The answer came in March of 2006, The Massacre. Originally titled St. Valentine's Day Massacre, the album was delayed to March, but when it dropped, the number was staggering. The Massacre sold over 1.14 million copies in just 4 days, one of the fastest selling rap albums of all time. First week sales, it sold over 1.14 million copies. It shot to number 1 on the Billboard's Top 200, and it went 5 times platinum with singles like Candy Shop, Just a Little Bit, Disco Inferno, and Out Control Remix featuring Mobb Deep. The singles dominated radio and MTV. Candy Shop and Just a Little Bit had crossover appeal, becoming global hits, but beneath the gloss, tracks like Piggy Bank kept 50 Cent's judge sharp, directly taking aim at Fat Joe, Jadakiss, and Nas. This was peak 50 Cent, part hitmaker, part villain. While the radio kept him on repeat, the streets debated whether 50 Cent's dominance came at the cost of hip-hop unity. His feud with Jadakiss and Fat Joe spilled into the mainstream, climaxing with both sides trading jabs on records and at award shows. But the biggest fracture was internal. The Game, fresh off the multi-platinum success of the documentary, The Game split from G-Unit. What could have been a dynasty stretched coast to coast turned into a bitter feud. Diss tracks flew, fans chose sides, and the unity in G-Unit was shaken. Still, The Massacre proved 50 Cent's formula worked. His balanced club smashes with street anthems, calculated controversy with undeniable hooks. It was an album that kept him at the center of the culture, whether you loved him or hated him. By the end of 2005, 50 Cent was untouchable commercially. He had his own video game, Bulletproof. He had a movie, Die Tryin. G-Unit had platinum plaques stacked across the board, but behind the empire, cracks were forming, and the wars both inside and outside the crew, would only intensify. From 2002 to 2005, 50 Cent and G-Unit ran hip-hop like a Fortune 500 company, but by 2006, Empire that had once looked invincible started to face its first real challenges. The same aggression, the same hunger that built the dynasty now threatened to tear it apart. The biggest blow came from within. After the success of the documentary, The Game and 50 Cent clashed over credit, control, and loyalty. What could have been a historic New York West Coast alliance collapsed into one of rap's most heated feuds. Game released diss tracks like 300 Bars and Running, while 50 Cent and G-Unit fired back. Fans began choosing sides, and for the first time ever, the G-Unit brand looked vulnerable. Another factor was oversaturation. 50's strategy of constant output, albums, mixtapes, clothing, sneakers, even video games had worked brilliantly at first, but by 2006, the market was flooded with G-Unit content. Fans who once couldn't get enough began feeling fatigue. Lloyd Banks' sophomore album, Ron Apple, released in 2006, but it underperformed compared to Hunger for More. Young Bucks, Buck the Road did solid numbers, but the magic of those first solo waves felt harder to recreate. Meanwhile, 50 Cent's never-ending list of enemies grew longer. From Jadakiss and Fat Joe to Nas and Cameron, beef had become central to the brand. While controversy kept his name in the headlines, it also alienated artists, DJs, and fans who once railed beyond the unit. At the same time, new movements were rising. Kanye West redefined what a rap superstar could look like. Dipset was on in Harlem. Lil Wayne was turning himself into the most prolific rapper alive. Suddenly, G-Unit wasn't the only crew who dominated the streets and the charts. Internally, the cracks deepened. Yayo's prison stints and controversies distracted from the magic and the music. Bucks began to feel overlooked. Banks retreated from the spotlight. The once united front started showing signs of fragmentation. By 2006, G-Unit was still powerful, still visible, still selling, but the aura of invincibility was gone. What had been a flawless run of domination now facing resistance from all sides, competitors, fans, and even within their own circle. The stage was set for a showdown that would define the next era of 50 Cent's career, Curtis versus Kanye West. September 11th of 2007, two albums, two visions for the future of hip-hop. On one side, 50 Cent, the reigning king of gangsta rap, releasing his third studio album, Curtis. On the other, Kanye West, the producer turned superstar, dropping Graduation. The industry billed it as a battle of the soul of hip-hop itself. 50, ever the master promoter, raised the stakes by claiming he retired from solo music if Kanye outsold him. The media ate it up. Fans debated endlessly. This wasn't just about music. It was a heavyweight fight for cultural dominance. Curtis had moments of brilliance. Tracks like I Get Money reminded fans of 50's ruthless charisma and knack for anthems, but much of the album leaned into familiar territory, gangster tropes, strip club records, and radio-ready singles. Meanwhile, Kanye's Graduation pushed boundaries with Daft Punk samples on Stronger and stadium-sized hooks on Good Life. Kanye delivered an album that sounded futuristic, global, and celebratory. The results were historic. In his first week, Kanye's Graduation sold over 950,000 copies. 50 Cent's Curtis moved an impressive 691,000 copies. Both numbers were massive, but Kanye came up on top. It was a symbolic passing of the torch. Kanye's victory signaled the decline of gangsta rap's dominance and the rise of a new era of artistry, experimentation, and crossover appeal. For 50 Cent, losing the sales battle didn't erase his legacy, but it marked the end of his run. As hip-hop's undisputed commercial juggernaut, Curtis went platinum, but compared to his past dominance, it felt like a loss. For G-Unit, the ripple effects were clear. The group that once defined the sound of the streets were no longer the center of the culture. The world was moving forward new sounds, new aesthetics, and new leaders. The Curtis versus Graduation battle wasn't just about who sold more records. It was about a cultural turning point. Hip-hop had evolved, and the crown had shifted. But even in defeat, 50 Cent wasn't finished. He would adapt, diversify, and continue to make noise, both inside and outside of music. Yet, the G-Unit era of a total dominance had officially closed. By the late 2000s, the unstoppable empire that was G-Unit had begun to fade. The golden years of platinum plaques, chart-topping singles, and global domination were over. What remained was a crew grappling with fractured relationships, a changing industry, and the weight of their own legacy. In 2009, 50 Cent released Before I Self-Destruct. While the album carried moments of grit and introspection, it failed to recreate the magic of its early work. By then, hip-hop had shifted. Kanye, Lil Wayne, and Lil Drake were shaping a new sound. Lloyd Banks struggled with label politics, briefly reigniting buzz with his 2010 hit Beamer, Benz, and Bentley, but he never fully recaptured his debut momentum. Young Buck faced financial and legal troubles. His ties to G-Unit strained. Tony Yayo remained loyal, but his output never reached the heights of his debut album. The once dominant machine had slowed to a crawl. Behind the scenes, tensions boiled. Buck was publicly ousted from the group, his fallout with 50 Cent playing out in a brutal detail. Banks grew increasingly distant, choosing independence over the G-Unit machine. Even Yayo, once the most loyal soldier, admitted to frustrations with how the empire had been run. The G-Unit name still carried weight, but the unity was gone. And yet, despite the decline, the impact of G-Unit's run cannot be overstated. From 2002 to 2007, they dominated hip-hop in a way few collectives have ever did. Every member went platinum, the mixtape game was forever changed, their branding, clothing lines, sneakers, video games set the blueprint for rap crews to operate like corporations. 50 Cent proved that a rapper could think like a CEO, flipping street buzz into global enterprise. The echoes of G-Unit reign can still be felt today. The influence runs through the mixtape hustle that birthed entire careers, through the branding strategies that every modern crew now employs, through the idea that hip-hop could be both street and global at the same time. The empire may have crumbled, but for a stretch in the 2000s, G-Unit owned hip-hop, and the run they had, the impact they left, remains one of the most iconic eras the culture has ever seen. Hip-hop has always been about moments when the culture shifts, when the sound changes, when one crew defines the streets, the charts, and the conversations all at once. For the first half of the 2000s, the moment belongs to 50 Cent and G-Unit. They weren't perfect, they fought, they fell out, they lost ground. But in their prime, they built an empire so powerful, so magnetic, that it seemed untouchable. They weren't just rappers, they were businessmen, brand builders, global stars. They redefined what a rap crew could be. Today, their influence is still live in the mixtape grind of hungry rappers, in the brand strategies of today's megastars, and the idea that hip-hop crews can be both a family and a corporation. 50 Cent and G-Unit may no longer run the industry, but for a time, they had it in a chokehold. Their run was more than music. It was a movement, a moment in time that changed the game forever. This was the iconic run of G-Unit and 50 Cent, and like all legends, their stories will never die.